keep everybody on their toes today to make sure no one nods off. It's been a long 3 days, but a great 3 days. So thank you very much all for coming back. I know you've all presented this morning. We only got 3 speakers. I think you might have 4 in your program. Just 3 of us this afternoon. And we're going to go back. So you might have, I hope most of you are around this morning and able to see the presentations that these people gave. And I hope you're going to have lots of questions because we're going to do this very interactive. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I've got a lot of questions, but I'm sure you've got better ones. So I'm going to try and give you plenty of time to get yours in. So without further ado, let me do some quick introductions, and I'm going to read them to make sure I don't get your titles wrong, because I always get people's titles wrong. So closest to me, Constantin Gonciulea, who is the CTO of Advanced Technology at Wells Fargo. Next to him, Elton, who is the Director of Quantum Research at Fidelity and part of the Fidelity Center for Applied Technology. Elton, thanks for joining us. And last, Marco Pistoia, who's a Managing Director and Head of Research and Engineering at JP Morgan Chase. So thank you all very much for coming along. So my opening question here is, I would love to hear what you say, how you talk to your bosses when they say to you, why are we spending all this money doing this research? Because I hear many justifications and promises and predictions about what this technology might do. But I wonder, when you have to justify spending now on a technology that might not have an effect or a real effect on your industry for some years, I wonder how you do that. So maybe we can start with Constantin at this end. How do you think about and prioritize the different benefits you think are going to come from quantum computing, and how do you explain it internally?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough, I didn't need to do that of my previous company or this company, because they asked me to do quantum computing, and I was kind of reluctant. I'm getting old, I need to learn more stuff, so I didn't, it was already sold, right? The CIOs were on board. Now, when other people ask, I can tell you what I say, right? Yeah. And this was in my presentation as well. So one way to think about it is what happened in classical computing in the 1940s, let's say. And arguably quantum computers are the same level. They are solving some toy problems. The first loaded program in a classical computer was printing the squares of the numbers from 1 to 100. And people would say, what can I do with this toy problem? Yeah. Right? Why do I need computers? Thomas Watson, the CEO of IBM, I think this was a little bit later in the 50s, he predicted the need for 5 computers in the whole world. What happened in banking? 20 years later, almost every bank got a mainframe. Right? So now, we expect that it will take less to be in production with a quantum computer. Right? Or let's say it won't happen at all. Is it worth taking the risk not to investigate? So we're in it early, and that's not an exception. I can give you examples in mobile, in JavaScript. For JavaScript, we spent like 4 years before going to production. So this is actually what we do in large banks. We investigate early.
Yeah. Do you have your eye on a particular application or a particular time frame? Is it that NISC systems in the short term are going to yield something, and so we've got to invest now, or is it there's this one killer app in 10 years that if we don't have is the bank it's going to destroy the bank?
So by far the most important application in the short term for us is sampling from classically intractable probability distributions. Right? For example, we have something that works for differential privacy, where you need to sample from exponential distribution and so on. So that's the only application we see in the near term.
All right. Elton, what do you say internally? How do you justify your paycheck?
Yeah, so firstly, I think Fidelity Investment is a company that places a heavy emphasis on technology. We often say that we are a tech firm rather than a financial service firm. We are one of the first one to offer a telephone line that you can call in and buy mutual funds. So technology is within the heart of Fidelity. So, so I don't need any justification to go into quantum. Our senior leadership, they went into quantum. They made the decision to do that, and I just follow that. Yeah. So how do I explain to other people the importance of quantum computing? I like to go to the point that at the beginning of 1990s, people start paying attention to quantum computing because of the Shaw's factoring algorithm, because it's able to solve some computational problems much faster than traditional methods. So we would like to think that in the same way in our firm. Maybe there are some applications that we can speed up from an hour into a second, into a minute. We don't know how much the speed up is, but this is what we like to think. And if the speed up is dramatic, then this opens up new capabilities and probably new products.
Right. Paolo.
Thank you. So I also didn't have to convince JP Morgan Chase to invest in quantum computing, because they actually hired me to do that, to lead the efforts in January of 2020. And I actually really like the vision that this company has. JP Morgan Chase, I think, was the first customer ever of IBM Q. So just like the fact that they joined an effort in quantum computing before any other company was already significant. And however, now things have changed. Of course, there are many more products, more investments that can be done, hiring more people. So how do I justify that? We have a very close relationship with all the product teams in the firm, in JP Morgan Chase, all these teams that are doing financial applications. So we have like a constant interaction with them. And so we have a database internally which we keep track of all these applications and why they need quantum computing. So I think there is no doubt that we are delivering, even though what we are delivering is not usable as of today because the quantum computers are not yet powerful enough. But the fact that we implement algorithms that solve these use cases that have high complexity is already a sign, and we're also very well integrated with the rest of the firm. So it's a very good interaction, and we believe that the benefit will be seen later when the hardware will make sufficient progress.
No. Marco, I'm sorry I called you Paolo, but I will call you by your proper name now.
Marco.
Yeah, Marco. Being close to those ultimate users and the applications, is that a good thing or a bad thing if you're looking at something that may not have real business value for years, maybe even a decade? How does that interaction work?
So the interaction is really good. So I think a lot of people, of course, may not even know what quantum is, but my team and I have done a lot of work in evangelizing quantum computing to the entire firm. A lot of presentations, a lot of meetings. So now everybody knows that everybody in JP Morgan Chase knows that JP Morgan Chase has a quantum team. And a lot of people are so enthusiastic. They came to us with problems, use cases. So in a few situations, we actually found out that maybe they were a little bit too enthusiastic. They came to us with problems that didn't require quantum. They're perfectly solvable on a classical computer. There is no bottleneck. So good to find out. So we put them on the side. But in many other cases, we actually find out that there is a need for quantum. And we are already implementing algorithms. Even though this will take years, we have a platform for quantum computing, a software platform. I mentioned that today during my presentation. I was very keen about building it as soon as I joined JP Morgan Chase. And our code is written according to the highest standards of software engineering. So we will reuse this code in the future when quantum advantage or even quantum supremacy will become a reality.
Right. So in terms of timing and the level of resource you're putting in now and whether you're accelerating your investments and so on, give us a sense of time frame here. So where you're sitting now, how does this look compared with what you were expecting 3 years ago? Are we further ahead, or are things taking longer than you expected? Are there particular things that are giving you confidence to push ahead at this point, or are you decelerating? I mean, Constantin, where do you think you stand?
I would say it's slower than we expected. So I started in 2018, right?
2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that point, people would say in 5 years we'll have 1 million qubits. And we're not there yet, we'll not be there yet, right? So you have to expand these time frames, I think. But that's typically what happened in the history, right? So I'm not worried about that. It's when we get to 1 million qubits, we know we can solve problems. So.
Yeah. Have there been any particular technical roadblocks or other things that have slowed it down that you didn't expect?
Hardware, right? We're not into hardware. We're waiting for hardware to be there, and then we are learning now what problems can be solved, and then when the hardware is ready, we'll try to solve those problems. A big danger is the hype, right? So maybe it will be a quantum winter because people overpromise and then. People say you are not delivering. Right?
I'd love to get back to that point because I start to hear people use that phrase quantum winter, and I wonder what it is and whether we'll feel it's an interesting question. But I mean, Elton, what do you think, compared with what you thought when you started out? I mean, how far have we got?
Yeah, I think that the whole industry is definitely going in the right direction. I think 7 or 8 years ago, I was in this ASPAN conference where we talk about, that at the time we don't have hardware. I think the different scientists, they were talking about NISQ algorithms. They were saying that we're entering the NISQ algorithm at the time. I think that was 2015 or 2016. And now we are in the next era, so their predictions are at least correct. And in terms of hardware, I think, it is a little bit slow, but I think, there's a lot of engineering challenges available, but we're seeing a healthy progress. We're seeing a lot of hardware that is entering this classically unsimulatable regime, so that is where things get interesting, that we have to run experiments to see what the results we did. It's not something that we can predict. And also, we have seen a few different hardware providers start to implement error mitigations, so that is an important step. And I don't hear that 2 or 3 years ago. And there's also some demonstration of very small scale quantum error corrections. And I think, so we're hopefully that's something that we can experiment in a large scale so that we can reach error correction. Yeah.
I mean, how much effort do you put into understanding the hardware and being able to anticipate, where this is going to go? Because otherwise, you're very much dependent on, as you say, on the time frame of hardware companies whose technology is kind of, their problem, not yours.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned in my presentation in the morning that we're trying to be hardware agnostic. So we don't bet on any single technology, but on the same time, we like to understand the different hardware architecture, why they made the decision that they're making to go in one way or another. So we try to understand the technology and see how they scale, but we don't bet on the technology at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, what do you think about progress? What's been good or bad?
Before joining JP Morgan Chase in January of 2020, I was at IBM Research working on quantum computing. And I actually think that if I think about, say, 2015 or 2016, when IBM started to put its computers outside for everybody to have access to them, I remember actually internally we were talking with other researchers. I think we're actually going faster, in my opinion, because I remember that when we talked about where we will be, like in 2020, or some of the things that we have now in quantum computing are things that we thought that we would have, say, at the end of the decade. So I think what happened is that quantum computing has had a positive explosion in the sense that it's become look at this conference. It's super populated. A lot of people are coming here. I heard that the very first instance of Q2B was a much smaller crowd. So now that it's becoming like a big community, and there is also a lot of competition, like between the hardware providers. So this has caused an acceleration, and we have witnessed a lot of things that, like even hardware characteristics that we didn't even think they would become available. For example, like in our, I presented this morning in our algorithms, we started to use some features that became available on the Quantinuum computer, like mid-circle measurement and reuse and quantum conditional logic, that I didn't expect them to become available so early in the history of quantum computing. So we have seen a lot of progress. I'm not saying that quantum advantage is around the corner, but definitely things are going in a positive way. We have to be careful of the hype that is always, there, unfortunately, and some companies are making big statements. But we, realistically speaking, I see that things are progressing in a good way, and also a little bit faster than what we expected.
Yeah. I mean, Elton, you mentioned error correction, and you said you're starting to see people talk about, implementing it in some ways. I mean, how much does, looking forward from this point, how much does the entire industry now depend on the speed at which error correction, turns up, and in what form and how quickly? Because it seems that, we might be sitting here in 5, 7, 10 years time having the same discussion, right? Waiting for something on this front to happen.
So first, I disagree with that. I think, in terms of experimenting error correction, it may still be a long time until we see a good number of logical qubits. But, error correction is converting physical qubits to logical qubits. As the hardware advances, we may see a lot more physical qubits available. For example, if you look at the IBM roadmap, they go from 50 2 years ago into 100 last year into 400 this year. So with more physical qubits, I'm sure there are many new interesting algorithms that we can experiment. There should be a new NISQ algorithms that could emerge. So there's definitely interesting things going on. So we don't have to wait for the end of error correction in order to run interesting algorithms.
Yeah, I mean, Constantin, how do you feel about that? I mean, how important is a big breakthrough in error correction in the kind of 3 to 5 year horizon, should we say, in this industry?
What I've seen is a promising curve. So it's like the classical increases, right? They expect a constant increase that will lead to reliable computers, right? So I'm hopeful from that point of view. But it won't happen in the next 5 years, probably, to get to the point where again, in 2018, when I started, there were a lot of promises and hopes. We talked to companies, photon-based, and they would say, and even trapped ion, and they would say, we'll reach 1 million qubits in a few years. It didn't happen. Right? So,
Well, so a couple of you have talked about the hype in this industry, and I guess what I wonder at the moment is, it seems natural for people to overpromise, particularly when, it's hard to decide. I mean, the potential is huge, but the time frame and the practicality are hard to kind of really assess. And so it's natural for people to want to look ahead, and it's natural when you're raising money to overstate the potential here. But I guess my question is, how much of what we're seeing now is a reaction to overpromising? It's just an expectation adjustment. And to what extent might there be a real winter, as in a real disappointment about where this technology is going? Because when you think about the AI winters that we've seen in the past, those have marked a period when technology breakthroughs have failed, when things people expected didn't happen, and the whole industry was set back for 5 years or longer. So where are we in quantum? Is it just a little bit too much froth and excitement, or is there a real risk of a more serious winter here? Constantin, you brought up the question.
There is a risk. So there is also hype in blockchain. My team is doing blockchain as blockchain in production. We're in production. We run every day from the technology point of view. But there is hype in crypto. these failures, FTX, and so on. And at that point, I thought about how can you recognize the hype, right? And now I realize it's across the board. You see inflated expectations, you see inflated investments. And this is why you'll have a winter, because these investments, people will start paying, right? And then inflated credentials. People even get, alternative credentials like even PhDs, night class PhDs, online PhDs, diplomas, and then they start something, they get money, right? They start promising, and so I thought about this in blockchain. And then I realized it's pretty much the same in quantum. Right?
Pretty much the same.
Yeah, and on my slides I had sort of a solution where I took 3 of Jeff Bezos's principles. He has 14 or something, maybe they increased, right? And they were bias for action, and if you do that, you overcome the expectations, right? I want to see it now. Don't promise me. You go to a CIO, say in 2 years you'll see this and that, right? Then he has frugality, which is you don't spend too much money. You have to be careful because that will lead to the winter. And the other one was deep diving. So you want to see something happening, not only talk, high-level talk.
Right. Elton, do you think there's a real risk of a winter here?
Yeah, I think so. If we look at any new emerging technology, if we follow what Gartner has presented for many technologies, most of them has experienced some kind of a winter or is currently experiencing winter now. For example, crypto. So I think it's probably normal to expect a winter sometime in quantum computing, although we don't know when that is happening. I think in terms of why the hype is happening, I think it's probably because people are interpreting the news very, very differently. For example, if we see this recent news on holographic wormholes, they merely run an experiment on a 9-qubit device and they studied the wormhole dynamics. They did not create any wormhole. There's nothing holographic here. So it just, I think it's just subject to interpretation here. And I have seen a lot of people talking about use quantum computing for weather forecasting, for many other things which appear to have very big importance. But I think we have to ask the actual people doing weather forecasting. The actual data scientists, is this meaningful? Don't just look at the news. Ask the actual people who know what they're doing whether this is meaningful. I think that is very important in managing our expectations of what this technology can deliver.
Interesting. Okay.
Thanks. So I agree that there is the risk of hype for sure. There is hype happening, a lot of overstatements, a lot of grandiose statements that do not correspond to reality, and this is causing problems. Even, for example, for me, when these statements come out, we have companies make claims that they have reached a level of sophistication in the hardware that seems to imply that quantum advantage is already available, quantum supremacy is already available, then people at people who are not technical, who don't understand quantum computing in JP Morgan Chase come to me and they ask me, so when are we going to see quantum in production? Look, there is an article that says that there are computers with hundreds and if not thousands of qubits. So then at the point I almost have to justify why we don't have quantum advantage. It's not our fault. These statements are not plausible and they are inflated. So there is a problem there. So I like to work with companies that and with partners that are very honest and that don't they have a roadmap and they keep their promises. So that's very important. Now, are we going to go into a quantum winter? Maybe. However, one thing that maybe was not true a few years ago, people are so active on social media, like Twitter, LinkedIn, much more than a few years ago. For example, there was an account, so excuse me for the bad word, but there was an account on Twitter called Quantum Bullshit Detector. I actually liked him, like whoever was behind him, behind that account. I liked it because that was like a hype killer. And unfortunately, this person, he or she, is not active anymore. But whenever there is some statement that is too grandiose and too false, like fake, basically, I see that people, scientists and other people immediately dispute these statements. Yeah. So, and without any problem, social media, unfortunately, sometimes is bad, sometimes can actually turn out to be a good thing. And we see that it's much more difficult to lie nowadays than it was a few years ago. No, so I hope that maybe we will not go into a disaster because of the people being vigilant and questioning results and so on.
Good use of social media, that's nice to hear. So we've got another 12 minutes or so, and I've got a ton of questions here, but I'd love to give all of you a chance. So please, I don't think we have a microphone, so if you don't mind shouting out your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question.
Oh, hang on, actually, we do have a microphone. I beg your pardon. Thank you very much indeed.
Hi, Marco. I have a question specifically to you.
Thank you.
So you said that you work closely with people from other departments when it comes to solving problems, right? And given that there is no generic guarantee that variational quantum algorithms will give advantage over classical algorithms, how do you sort of decide on what problem to tackle? Or when it comes to developing or finding out specific use cases, how do you sort of like decide which one the team wants to work on? No. And once you decided, how do you sort of like divide the task among the big group that you have? Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is an excellent question because it's something that we had to face. So we have a lot of requests and we cannot work in parallel on all of them because the bank is huge. JP Morgan Chase is like the biggest bank, and we have the quantum team cannot really scale to the entire bank. Hopefully in the future we will be decentralized and there will be many more people and we will help everybody. So at this point we have to make a choice. Which applications are we going to do first? So we're actually studying these problems in a way very similar to what the Goldman researcher presented today. So we analyze problems, we understand the first wave applications. So those that will benefit from quantum computing first, and also we're looking at those that for which the advantage can be quantified. So you're right, variational algorithms are based on heuristic assumptions. So you can be lucky and get advantage, or you may be less fortunate and don't get the advantage or get actually inaccurate results. So we try to choose applications for which the solution is guaranteed to be correct, and also we understand the speed up that we're going to get, and so we choose those. For example, if we have to choose between something that has polynomial speed up or quadratic speed up, of course we take the quadratic speed up first, or exponential speed up. If that ever happens, we take that first, because then the advantage will come earlier in the process. Take this off.
All right. Any other questions? Next question. Yeah, we still have the microphone. Thank you very much.
Hi. This question is, I guess, is for the entire panel. So apparently there are no commercially useful quantum solutions nowadays for finance. That's almost a given. But in terms of the strong evidence you guys hope to see, well, first of all, what kind of evidence would you be considered to be interesting enough to see that quantum is actually going to be useful for finance eventually? And on top of that, how much patience or capital are you willing to throw in before you guys actually see a strong evidence for it?
Who wants to take that? Constantin?
I can start. So I'll go back a little bit to the previous question and address the relationship with the business, because it's also relevant here, right? So the businesses come to us for advice, but there is no monopoly of knowledge, right? It's not that we need to solve. they get information from us, and then, especially the quants, they are fully equipped to investigate themselves, right? We're just speeding up. And in my case, advanced technology means we go first. It doesn't mean that we do fancy stuff, right? So the business, for example, was interested in this, in the limit order book, right? So we put a lot of effort into understanding that. And there is a presentation at the same time on some hidden Markov models implementation. And they are asking us about what's going on, right? And we are reporting to them. There is some progress. The state space is small, so there is hope, but we're not there yet, right? But it's not like we need to solve the problem for them, right? It's a collaboration always.
Elton, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I can say a little bit more here. I think when a business unit reaches us to see whether there's a quantum solution, obviously we study the problem very carefully, and we tell them based on whether our own investigation or based on literature, what kind of a quantum speed up there is, and whether this is something that we can implement today. So we try to be very transparent on what the advantage is and how do we achieve it, so that we don't give very false estimations to our business unit owners. And I think most of them are very understandable, because this is a new technology, and new technology doesn't always work. So I think they don't blame us if we don't come up with a good solution. So I think and these are the people who we like to work with internally in the team. Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
Should we, Marco, do you have anything to add to that, or should we
I
go?
just want to say that it
Yeah.
makes sense to actually collaborate internally. So quantum computing is a very kind of intimidating discipline. So unfortunately, some people almost stay away from that. So our work at JP Morgan Chase has also been about educating other people. So we now have people that were not trained to work on quantum computing who understand it well enough so they can actually collaborate with us. And they're not necessarily working in the research team, but they are in the product divisions. So that's actually the best solution when we have a tight collaboration with the business units.
All right, it's a question down near the front here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I had a quick question about your expectations for hardware improvements in the near term. So we are in an environment of high interest rates. It's going to be difficult for startups and companies to get funding. What would you like to see in the next 2-3 year terms in hardware improvements that can show better outcomes in the financial applications? I had a twofold question. The second one would be FTX was mentioned, but I would personally consider FTX as a failure of risk management. And not to our moderator, FT came out with an article saying, isn't anyone doing due diligence anymore? Comparing that to quantum, in a way, it looks like the risk is more technical risk. And I was wondering if, in your opinion, what keeps you up at night in terms of technical risks in the future to quantum? So again, pulling up an FT article, a proponent of quantum computing said, there is one concern that he says he has heard, which is as yet undiscovered physics. But he even considers that as an exciting thing, that the quantum computer scientists will be able to prove. This would be interested in hearing your thoughts on those two.
So I think what we'll see, and it's a good thing, is consolidation. Some of the startups built a war chest and they will survive. Others don't have the money and they probably won't be able to raise more money, and they won't be able, right? But that's perfectly natural, right? So consolidation is good, and I think we'll see more progress. What was the other, in terms of comparing with FTX? Yeah, so the inflated expectations and the inflated investments can happen in startups in quantum as well. Right? There are startups that got hundreds of millions, and they are not necessarily considered high performers, right? So, and once they go down, then you have disappointments, right? And it can like a domino effect, right? So, yeah, hopefully the consolidation will solve some of the problems.
Yeah, like I think in terms of a due diligence, I think it's up to every user of the quantum computing hardware or software to do their own due diligence. Like for us, as I mentioned in my earlier presentation, we try to get our hands dirty, and we verify the claims that the quantum provider says. If they say that this works, we verify whether this works. And if it doesn't, then we'll say that, hey, sorry, you are saying something that is exaggerated. Yeah. So I think it's really up to the user to make sure that the providers are checked. Yeah.
So I would like to answer the first question about what would we want to have in the next 2 or 3 years. I think everybody would be happy with more qubits, and also with high fidelity, of course, and also with quantum computers that can execute deeper circuits. So that's the struggle that we have every day, like not enough qubits and not enough support for deeper qubits, because the coherence time is what it is.
We've got time for one more. Do we have another? There's one at the back.
Thanks. So I guess in the future, we hope that quantum computers will be a lot faster than classical computers for solving some problems. But for the foreseeable future, we would probably expect them to also be a lot more expensive as well. Are the problems in finance of the type where you can solve them pretty well at the moment, and maybe the quantum computer solves it 10 times faster, but that doesn't justify the cost? Or are they of the type where there's no hope of solving it classically at the moment, and so your organizations would be prepared to pay the higher price tag in order to solve that problem?
What we got from the business, for example, when we told them you can get a quadratic advantage, they said, I can add more servers, I'm not interested in that. Right? So they really expect a lot more to, like you're saying, to, if they could do that now, they can invest, they have money, right? They can, so it has to be a lot more than quadratic. Monte Carlo probably is a no-go for the business, frankly. So in the short term, like I said, sampling so measuring is sampling from a distribution. The business is interested in that, right? If you want, let's take the exponential distribution. If you want to do it classically and sample, that's pretty expensive. So for us, that's one of the low-hanging fruit. I don't know if people who talked about random QRNG, they include this kind of sampling in it, but that's what we see as really paying off in the near future.
Yeah, I should say that I think, so what we do in the firm is that, we investigate in the technology and we tell the business units what the technology can do. But ultimately, it's up to them to decide, when a quantum solution is available, it's up to them to decide whether the benefits justify the cost. If we want to buy a computer, we buy one that suits our need. We don't buy the most expensive one. So I think this applies in any business applications.
Yeah, I actually agree with what Elton just said. So we actually, the ultimate decision belongs to the product groups. So we always tell them what type of advantage we are expecting. It's the advantage that we already have, but of course on very small data sets. So it's up to them to decide. I also have to say that every single problem that is solved in finance, say optimization problems, machine learning, Monte Carlo simulations, is already solved today with classical computers. However, it is solved through approximations. In order to achieve these results in real time, there are heavy approximations. So our hope with quantum computers is to be able to solve the same problems in the same amount of time or even less, but with higher accuracy. So that's what we hope to achieve with quantum.